Dr. Kevin Kariuki was supposed to be here. He was actually on his way when he was called that the president has asked him to go represent him somewhere at another session. And so if you don't mind, I will read his speech. I'm not Dr. Kevin Kariuki. You can tell. My name is Anthony Young. I'm the director of the Climate Change and Green Growth Department under Dr. Kevin Kariuki. So I read his remarks. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, partners, and delegates, I'm pleased to welcome you to this session on the last day of our annual meetings, where we have heard great insights and made decisions on the topical issue of the reform of the global financial architecture to serve Africa's development agenda. We are pleased to have our partners, the Trade and Development Bank and UNEP, alongside the Africa Circular Economy Facility donors, Finland, and the Nordic Development Fund, who are here with us to share ideas to advance the circular economy. We are encouraged by the African leaders' concerted efforts to ensure that the global financial architecture aligns with the growth levers of the continent and that it has the critical resources, both natural and human, to drive carbon neutrality agenda by 2050. Africa has a green hydrogen market that is set to increase from about $5 billion in 2022 to about $134 billion in 2032. An electric vehicles market estimated to reach about $7 trillion by 2050. And it also has 11 terawatts of solar energy, 350 gigawatts of hydroelectricity, 110 gigawatts of wind energy, and 15 gigawatts of geothermal energy. Why are we in darkness despite this? And in agriculture, it has 65% of the uncultivated global arable land. Therefore, unblocking of adequate capital flows to transform these resources is a clear win-win for everybody. The African Development Bank is pleased to host this event as a part of a broader dialogue on the appropriate financial architecture for Africa's transformation. The bank's 10-year strategy aims to promote investments in natural capital management, biodiversity, and nature conservation. Through mechanisms such as the African Circular Economy Facility, the bank will accompany African countries as they develop circular economy models in critical areas, including mining and nature-based sectors. The circular economy provides opportunities to bring innovations at the base of the pyramid into the mainstream economic system of a country. As a development strategy, circular economy connects and creates new value chains for the reuse, repairing, recycling, repurposing of materials and products. This creates new economic models as well as jobs for Africa's youth. After all, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services has estimated that over 62% of GDP of African economies relies on natural resources. Circular economy strongly resonates with the African Development Bank's commitment to addressing the pressing issue of climate change and promoting sustainable economic growth. Let me be clear. Circular economy principles align with the bank's agenda of transitioning Africa towards green growth through the high fives, and it is indeed in line with the theme of these annual meetings on Africa's transformation. 2 years ago, in May 2022 in Accra, we launched the Africa Circular Economy Facility at the bank's annual meetings. ACEF, that's the Africa Circular Economy Facility, was and still is the only multi-donor trust fund dedicated to the mainstreaming of circular economy in Africa. In its second year of operation, ACEF has established a solid foundation, which you are going to hear about this morning. Building on this solid foundation, ACEF is now embarking on an expansion phase to connect dots, aligning policy with business value chain development. With the support of ACEF, in sync with newly developed African Union Commission's Continental Circular Economy Action Plan, the continent will harness numerous benefits of resource efficiency through responsible consumption and production patterns. ACEF is now ready for its expansion phase, and I call on your support in advancing its work program. And so let's together seize this opportunity for a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and integrated continent. I thank you for your kind support and welcome you once again. I have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Davina Milenja to take us through what we have done with the Africa Circular Economy Facility since inception. Davina, you have the floor.
Well, thanks, Tony. Tony is our Director for Climate Change and Green Growth. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. 2, 3, 4 years ago, just before COVID, Finland invited us to Helsinki for the first World Circular Economy Forum that Africa was represented. And we didn't know much about circular economy. We did waste management in our investments, but none of it, if you did a WordSAR, you would not find circular economy anywhere on our programs. And so, the usual, we did a Google search and found that there was an African Circular Economy Alliance that was initiated by Rwanda, South Africa, and Nigeria. And so we frankly called up the countries, and we were led to Helsinki by the Minister of Rwanda for Environment. And since then, ACEF was created. So thank you, Finland. Thank you, NDF, for being part of this journey. And today, we are here to basically encourage and ensure the work that is done, and we are happy to have TDA Bank. We are happy to be working with UNEP on the Global Circularity Program, and because we see the value. So, ACEF. For us, it sits within the Vice Presidency. Tony just introduced VP Kariuki. So other bank, circular economy sits within the Vice Presidency of Power, Energy, Climate Change, and Green Growth. And it's in the Department of Climate Change and Green Growth. And that's where ACEF said, as it says, it was created 2 years ago, but it has very direct links with the other complexes that are in the private sector, in agriculture, human development. On the panel, we'll have the Director for Water and Sanitation. We really will harness those leakages. The benefits. Just as you're coming in, we had Takataka Nimali documentally here showing the value that they are creating out of waste. But clearly it has all those benefits, as you can see. And for the continent that has, I think my director keeps saying the 3% CAS, 3% climate finance, 3% on I think we have 14% on private sector engagement in climate action. These are the benefits that we really want to see financial sector get behind, private sector get behind, because they're very clear benefits for Africa. So 2 years ago, indeed, we put out a research work to see where the opportunity lies for the continent. So there were 4 broad areas that clearly link with our investment portfolio on integrated waste management, in regenerative agriculture and food system that is big. Yesterday we had a session with WRI on the work we are promoting on food systems in Rwanda for circular economy, on built economies, and then on circular manufacturing. So there is, the reason why we're involved in this is the value on the base of the pyramid, where we need to focus in the whole transformation. So we see a lot of opportunities in these 4 areas that can lift the youth, the women, the population that is really at the base of the pyramid, because there are opportunities. You meet them at the skill level they have, at the language level they have, and that's where we want to start to act as we move up. So, ACEF, the Africa Circular Economy Facility, when we conceptualized it 3-4 years ago, we didn't know where the opportunity lay. And so what we did was to conceptualize it as a seed funding to understand what the value chains are and how do you finance them. And so clearly, immediately the issue was, how do we engage at a policy level such that countries or governments can start to develop policies that incentivize private sector? Because we understood that 75% of Africa's NDCs would be financed by the private sector. So there has to be policy incentive that then creates the value of circular economy, whether we're looking at it from the SDG side or from the climate action side. So we started a pillar on capacity building for policy development. And number 2 was at the base of the pyramid where we have those innovations, there was a need to handhold the business sector. This was brought out every time we had a conference and had operators in the circular space. I remember one panel, this young man says, listen, I do this, I know what I'm doing, but every time I walk into the bank, the ask is, where is your market value? And I don't have that. As I know people are buying, but I don't have that research. And I just need research in knowledge on how to present my market opportunity. So we created an incubation hub for business development for the SMEs, because that is where the value really is. The third one is the one that took us to Helsinki, the ACEF, the Africa Circular Economy Network Alliance. That, being born before us in 2017, had been lagging in different ministries. Rwanda had a part of it, South Africa had a part of it, and Nigeria had a part of it. And so every time a minister changed, it dropped somewhere. And so there was an ask that the bank should anchor it so that there's continuity, there's sustainability. So we've anchored that since the ask came in 2020. It had World Economic Forum come and support that. And right now it has 13 member countries and it has 15 strategic members. And this is also called for any of the entities that are in the room to join that. It's a free voluntary participation. For knowledge partners, we have academia on board, we have foundations on board. Ideally, we work around the critical 5, we call them the 5 big bets. As sectors that we think will drive the agenda. And so each country leads a sector, a working group, and then the strategic members support that. And so we want to grow it in that group. So how does ACEF align with regional and global agendas? So on the SDGs, basically carries all the 17. In fact, initially we said 16, then we realized that the SDG 17 is about partnerships, and that's what we're doing. We are a coalition. And so it does align with all the 17, but very particularly for us is on SDG 12, on responsible production and consumption, and 2 on the agenda on climate change. And so we're working with UNEP, our partners that are here. They'll speak more about that, on working around creating a protocol, because these standards are very important in defining the opportunity in circular economy. So we are working on developing a global circularity protocol that will then create the value that, in the end, if we even decide to put it out there as a bond, it is based on credible and transparent definitions. The next one is on the Continental Agenda, Agenda 2063. It aligns with 7 of, I think, 17 goals that are in the 7 aspirations of the Continental Agenda. And then, of course, under the bank's high fives, it aligns with all the high fives because, again, it is at the center of humanity and nature. So we call it the mustard seed. It's small, but very powerful. Currently, we are at 4 million because that's when we were conceptualizing. We said, let's start with that seed financing and see the opportunity. So we are still at that level. We'll talk about the growth path. And then we have 2 donors, Finland and the Nordic Development Fund. And we're looking at an expansion in the next 2 years to come to 16 million, again trying to create the base. We know there are different partners. The EU has a program on circular economy. What we do, we plug the gaps. Our idea is not to crowd out the private sector. Our role is to plug and connect the dots. So we have, I mentioned the SME program. We're starting with 3 cities, in Kigali and Abidjan and Accra, where we'll have hubs for SMEs. And then we have 13 countries that are involved in the network of alliance, trying to create the African voice on the global stage around circular economy. And then we are supporting 5 countries with their national development, national circular economy roadmaps. So what are the roadmaps? The roadmaps really give us clarity on where the opportunities are. I mentioned the national determined contributions, the country's commitments on the climate change. The idea is that if we create circular economy roadmaps, the opportunity is then picked up and embedded in the NDCs that are 5-year programs, but it is also embedded in their national development plans. And so currently we're doing 5, but we're doing 5 knowing that there are other countries that already have waste management national plans. And so we're anchoring on those that can share opportunities. Some of them are already members of the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, others are not, but they have a replicability potential that we think we can then anchor when we get into the next, in the next phase of the facility. The AfriCirculars is the innovators program that looks at having startups, because we talked about the youth deficit on the continent. How do we incentivize and grow that base? We are starting with 3, but beyond the 3, we are talking to that network of innovators, the network of hub creators that are already on the market, that already know what the opportunities are. These are ideas that we've picked through the World Circular Economy Forums. It was held here in Kigali in 2022. Some of these ideas were from there when we met really the big networks. 2 days ago, we met the team behind the East Africa Circular Economy Network that will be inaugurated, I think, in June. We're going to go behind that. The idea is not to create what the private sector can do. What we are trying to do is create the platform that can grow the opportunities. So in short, what is the Africa Circular Economy Alliance? Like I mentioned, currently we have 13 members. We're still growing that. We work with these strategic members, as you can see, some of them are UN agencies, others are associations, foundations, academia, and it's really an open platform for people with different ideas to participate and pull together as we drive the agenda. The 5 big bets was the first research we did on identifying the opportunity, and so the idea is to invest around the value chain, and of course we host the secretariat within the African Development Bank. Sorry, that was the last. This is my important slide, and I think this is my call for action. We're going to be embarking on the next phase. We are tying it with the next phase of the NDCs. As you know, 2025, we have the next phase. It's called NDC 3.0. We are starting it now, so the opportunities of circular economy are embedded in the next editions of NDCs. And so that is on the policy side. But on the private sector build-up, we're trying to look to the banks, we're trying to look to the different private sector networks to handhold, to anchor the private sector opportunities. What is it, and I would be really interested to hear when the panel sits up here, what is it? What are those things that can trigger action really quickly for us as a development bank, but for the other financing institutions out there? The third is the African voice has to be heard, and I repeat this, because until you can do a word search and find circular economy, you miss the opportunity. And it's very important that we articulate what circular economy means using local knowledge and local metrics. We are going to be designing the global circularity protocol. It is important that it speaks to Taka Taka Nimali and all these acronyms that speak to the people that are waste pickers, that are designing innovations. And so it's very, very important to us that as we carry the African voice onto the global platform, it ties to the value at the base of the pyramid. That is how we shall transform Africa. And I think that's my last call to action. Thank you very much. There is the team that supports me. You can see they're all ladies.
Thank you very much, Davina. We have clearly said it several times. We want to make it work, give it to a lady. And we've seen how it's worked thus far. Let me state here that the bank, the African Development Bank, has received so much support, and we are instrumental to certain things happening. We have the MDB group on circular economy, and the bank has been instrumental to this because we've been on it now for almost 3 years, since 2020. And that is our own export to the global community. And then we are also represented on the World Economic Forum's advisory panel on circular economy. This gives us that leverage. Why have we gone that far? I want us to acknowledge the support that we've received from our executive director, Mette Knudsen, who represents the Nordic community, for which we have received so much support. Thank you very much, Madam, for this. Now we have heard there are opportunities. There are also challenges. Who can address this more than the practitioners? Tell us. We want to be relevant. We want this to reach where it ought to go. So I have with me here very powerful personalities who will come to address these issues. And I have the privilege of inviting His Excellency, Pekka Tapiola, who is the Ambassador of Finland to Kenya. Please, you're welcome, sir. Pardon me? Where do you want me? Where you're comfortable. We have also Ms. Satu Santala, who is the Managing Director of the Nordic Development Fund, one of our strong partners. Thank you very much, Madam. Please. I'm pleased to invite Mr. Admasu Tadese, the Group President and Managing Director, Trade and Development Bank. You're welcome, sir. We're happy to have financial institutions in this business because it's a serious business and it involves money. I also have the privilege of inviting Ms. Fatu Ndoye, who is the Deputy Regional Director for UNEP for the Africa office. You're welcome. And I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Oswald Chanda, who is the Director, Water Development and Sanitation Department at the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. Now the question, what does circular economy mean to you and why are you engaged in it? So, I'll give you 2 minutes to make your brief introductions, then give you the tough questions. So, Ambassador, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me with this? Thank you. Thank you very much, and it's great to see so many of you still on the last morning here, and really to focusing on something which I think is fundamentally important. What does circular economy mean? I mean, it's a good question. It basically means a new, better way of doing things. I mean, we have overconsumption, We have problems with pollution. We're dealing, as UNEP would say, with the triple planetary crisis. We need to find solutions, and we can find those solutions by looking smartly at what we can do. And now we're in Africa. Here you have a long tradition of thinking, as you do in countries, which my own country was relatively poor for a long time, and you didn't throw away things, but you tried to use them over and over again. You tried to get maximum benefit of them. You tried to see how can we get this working better, how can we get most of this without having to get new resources, but actually to reuse resources. So it makes economic sense, it makes environmental sense, and it makes, in general, sense. So we need to find these solutions. And I think what it means for me, and I'm very proud that the Finnish government, together with the NDF, has been playing a key role in setting up ACEF and ACEF, in that we need to get this global conversation going much better. And there are mutual responsibilities. We just had a while back, I think it was 3 weeks ago, consultations between the Nordic countries and the leadership of UNEP in Stockholm, and we were really focusing on how to get this to work. And we realized that at UNEA 6, for instance, we really did try to get a good resolution on circular economy. We failed. Not because different parts of the constituency did not want that. I think there is general acceptance in that this is important, but because we need to learn to talk to each other in a better way, in a less sort of, maybe we Europeans are sometimes a bit bad in that, in a bit of a sort of less preaching way, and more seeing that where do we find our common interests and how can we go forward. So I think that circular economy is the solution which we need to look at in the future. For my country it's important, and you will notice it already at the Helsinki airport, because I think our airport is the first one which actually has a second-hand fashion boutique in the departures lounge, which I do have to mention, just as a showcase of how important we think this is. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Please put your hands together. He's raised a couple of issues. Yesterday we talked about carbon markets, and what people said was, what does it mean? You guys understand it, you have your PhDs. But for the lady in the farm, what is carbon market? So if we raise the same issue, we speak to ourselves, circular economy, but what does it really mean, and why are we doing it? Yes, madam. Please.
Thank you. And I think I'll build on what Pirkka has spoken about, because I think you put it really eloquently. I just think that for us to understand circular economy is really to think of it as a solution, a win-win-win solution, or you can add many more wins into that sentence. It's just a way of doing things in a smart way, making sure you use your resources thoroughly, and you find ways of keeping them in the system rather than always going for new resources. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's not really taking away anything. It's not really having to only focus on the environment, but it is really focusing on an economic approach that also does bring benefits in terms of environment, climate, but very importantly, jobs, economic growth, opportunities. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this thought, or this approach. Why we, the Nordic Development Fund, are engaged on this? Maybe important to explain a bit what the NDF is about. We are a development and climate fund owned by the 5 Nordic countries. And we exist for the purpose of really co-creating and moving forward approaches in the climate and development nexus space. So finding solutions that are good for development, but also good for climate. And I think circular economy is really a very clear case of such an approach. And therefore, we find it important to engage on this. And very happy to have engaged with the African Development Bank and other partners on finding ways of introducing this topic, introducing approaches and piloting them and hoping to move forward on them. So I think that's all I'll say for now.
Back to you shortly. Mr. Tadesse, you may not know, a lot of people refer to you as Mr. Magician. You took TDB from where it was, made it a global institution with innovative tools and techniques. Why circular economy? Why is it important to you as a development bank?
Thank you very much, moderator, and good morning to all. Very happy to come after the two eloquent speakers. It makes my job a lot easier. Very briefly, for TDB Group, we've always been a triple bottom line institution. It's not uncommon in our industry. And as much as we've understood the imperatives around environmental sustainability, we've been focusing on renewable energy and electrified transport. We've not really gone deeply enough into the circular economy space. We've understood the waste to energy potential, and there's some very exciting models that have been celebrated and brought into existence. But of course, we do need an arrowhead to help us go deeper and to look at this whole space much more comprehensively. And that's why I think at a facility like this is really important. For us, we've been really intensifying our response to the imperative of climate change, as well as the SDGs, of course. And one of the things we've been doing is, addressing the areas that are low-lying fruit for us, including our lovely building that we've put up here in Nairobi, which we inaugurated about a year ago and is a green certified building. And that is, again, trying to walk the talk. There's a lot of talk, but walking it is a lot harder. And so I'm not going to be sitting here saying that we have a whole lot to say yet on the circular economy front, but we have been greening the bank, and that greening process will also result in us following these types of facilities, looking to co-finance a whole lot more. We have the Trade and Development Fund, which is a new SPV within the group that will look to do more things upstream, because an area like this that has yet to be unlocked needs a lot of special funding that's not commercial. I think the presentations that AFDB put up, very, very pertinent. There's a lot of knowledge, practical knowledge, applied knowledge that needs to be made available to practitioners, because people may be committed, but they don't always see the practicalities. And I think this is where it's going to be very helpful. But it's not just about the knowledge, it's the business development, it's the incubation. And so, I mean, for us, we're going to be learning alongside many others, but we do have what we now call Green Plus shares. And I'm very happy that the African Development Bank, as always, has been a pioneering and catalytic partner to put green equity into an institution like us. That allows us to put our shoulder to the wheel and follow these types of initiatives much more closely. And I should give credit to Denmark through the IFU, which has been a very good partner to us. They're also looking to help us scale up with these types of facilities more. And we look forward to the Nordic Development Fund and others. The good ambassador from Finland has been to our green building.
Which is a wonderful building.
I should give you the mic.
It's a good building. It's great.
So it's not hype. He has seen that it's green. And all of this is just to say we're very committed, and we look forward to working with various partners in this area. And we hope we'll have some very good feedback and practical results to share with the industry and the community at the next AGM.
Please put your hands, because this is a very interesting piece of work. Sir, for you to be certified as a green building means your energy intensity is very good. Africa is a low-emitting continent, but very high energy intensity. So that you've done this, which is really one of the pillars of circular economy, that your resource use is low and it can be stretched further, makes you a leader in this space, not just about waste collecting at the bottom. So thank you so very much for leading those green initiatives. And we're hoping that many other institutions, financial institutions, will follow you. And the African Development Bank is there to constantly support. Ms. Fatu, you're from UNEP. You're the global leader on environmental issues. We've fought for long whether circular economy is purely an environmental thing or is an economy-wide initiative, and you have a role to play. Why is this important?
Thank you very much, Tony, and really happy to be here. For us in UNEP, this is really in our DNA. Our overall mission is to care for the environment, and one way of doing so is really looking at a broad spectrum of areas, and circular economy is one of them. And in scaling up sustainable consumption and production, and circularity is really critical to addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste. So here it really encapsulates what UNEP does and areas where UNEP work: climate, nature and biodiversity, and pollution. And central to really the transition into a net zero future is the transition through the circular economy. So for us, it is really important to work with partners and stakeholders to really provide a space where we bring all the stakeholders, the whole of society and the whole of government together to think through what are the best approaches, what are the best tools, methodologies that we can put forward to advance the circular economy. It is not just a debate about the environment, as you said it's a debate about our economies and our future. And this is, we also see it as a great opportunity for green jobs, for reskilling, retooling, repurposing our economies and the way we work, especially looking at youth. And here, when we talk about Africa, as you've mentioned earlier, it's really critical for us to look at that dimension. This is a space where not only can we transition to more sustainable futures, but we can also create the jobs for the future. We can create and innovate. And I think that's also something that ACEF and the Africa Circular Economy Alliance do also very well in partnership with us. And as my colleague David, who's responsible for our portfolio on circular economy, reminds me, this is also, circular economy is in Africa's DNA. Africa is not the one to waste. Africa is actually very low for now in terms of waste generation. And this is really an opportunity to go back to Africa's principal values. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Africa, circular economy is in Africa's DNA. If you had the privilege of coming from poor homes like some of us came from, and you were not the first child, you would know that you won't have brand new clothes because it kept being passed down to others. That was circular economy in motion. Our parents knew it. There was no waste. Mr. Chanda, beyond the waste we recycle, I know that the African Development Bank is doing some innovative things in this space. We may not have called it outright that we're doing circular, but when you look at it, it's actually circular economy. Can you give us your take on what is it that you are leading in the bank in this space?
Thank you very much, and good morning. Yeah, for us, I think following the strategy that we developed, the bank approved, we look at water, that water by nature is secular, you know. It goes through cycles. And in that cycle, there's a lot of interaction that goes on. Some contamination, pollution creating. So water comes in as a product, as a service, you know, and as a resource. So when you look at it from a bird's eye view, you clearly understand and see the secular nature of water. And waste is part of that cycle. And so we see that if we critically look at this cycle, there is need to extract and to remove some of this waste. The cycle goes on, and that cycle will continue. Whatever we do, that cycle will continue. Otherwise, once there's no water that we can use, the nature can use, the industries can use, everybody else can use, there will be no life. That's why we say water is life. So what are we doing, and how are we looking at this differently? So we see that in the process, in the participation of this cycle, there is the need to clean, there is the need to extract resources and reuse them, as you're indicating. You know, when you look at wastewater, for instance, we see that, okay, this is water now that has been contaminated, polluted. We need to extract what is in there so that this water can be reused. And as we are extracting these resources, some of it is very useful. We get biogas, for instance. You know, we can generate energy. We can provide for clean cooking. You know, we can extract solids from there that farmers can use. So there is business. There's a business case in this cycle, you know, and we see that there's employment in this cycle. You know, there is empowerment in participation in this cycle. So when we design our programs and our projects, we're saying, how can we maximize the participation in this cycle? How can we popularize, you know, to many countries today, waste is a headache. Solid waste, liquid waste is just a headache. You know, do you have a sea nearby? Let it go to the sea. You know, is there a dumping site? Just dump it there. But there's a resource in all these facilities. And it's that realization that is changing our approach to the design and implementation of these projects, because we see that we are extracting resources that are making a difference. We are making a business case that is attracting the private sector in this cycle. You know, we are making a case that is helping reduce the cost of doing business production. Here in Kenya, we're working on a waste treatment plant where we want all the energy to come from the extracted methane generating the electricity for the plant. You know, so for us, when we look at circular economy, we just following through and participating in the natural cycle that is there, you know, that is being disrupted by human activities and nature. Thank you.
There is an interesting initiative the bank is working on. We call it Youth Adapt Challenge. We believe that somewhere on this continent lies the solution to climate change for this continent. We are in a city where several years ago, when Kenya hadn't fulfilled the goals of the Human Development Index, it did not know how to manufacture cell phones, yet it leapfrogged and created M-Pesa, which became the mother of money transfer, things like that. So we believe that somewhere here there is. And so we have a program that we launched bringing young people, very young people, and we have this very interesting initiative. This young lady uses drones, had one drone, equips it with artificial intelligence, and it flies around to find where drains are clogged so that they can be removed before the floods come. We found it very exciting. And almost 90% of what she removes from there is plastic waste. So she sets up a plastic shredding plant to set it. Very innovative. Now she's expanded with our support. We just provided $100,000. And she's been able to use that to attract maybe almost $1 million now. They expanded to several countries. Those are the things that we do, innovation. But the Nordic Development Fund has taught us to do that, because over the years, we have gone in with you to areas where others have refused to go to because they consider it risky. Why? Can you tell us, since you invested and decided to kickstart the Africa Circular Economy Facility, what is that one thing that you really are proud of, that you would want to do it again over and over if you had to?
That's a hard question. That's a hard question.
Volume? Yes.
How about now? It's on.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, I think it's on now.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that hard question, because always singling out one thing is super hard. But I have to say that, well, I'm personally very proud that we sit here today and we see that the facility has gotten off the ground. I'm new at NDF, but I was involved on the Finnish government side when the whole initiative was getting started and when the Circular Economy Forum was hosted in Helsinki and so on. So I was part of the original conversations, and I'm really happy to see that it's moved so much towards becoming reality. Of course, it's still early days, and I think that's what I think for NDF, maybe that's the biggest sense of pride, that we have been able to engage and see that there is really scope for this initiative, there's scope for partnerships building around it. And I think really picking on what colleagues on the panel have said, for example, really building on youth innovations. And as you also mentioned, this continent has so much opportunity in its youth. And I believe not only that there is somewhere a solution, I think in many places there are solutions. And then by investing in them and scaling them up, providing those opportunities, I think many of them will really start changing the continent and the globe. So I think that's a key element and something that I at least am very proud of. But also, as you've sort of really beautifully described, the sort of natural cycle or the cycle of the nature that we shouldn't be working against, but working for and with. And I think that's brilliant. I think, for example, regenerative agriculture is a really good example of that, whereby using circular economy, maybe you may not call it that, but by using different kinds of farming methods that then you reduce dependency on external inputs like fertilizer, you strengthen what I know the continent wants to be more, to have a better food sovereignty. So you're kind of, by using these methodologies that can often be actually traditional natural methods of doing things, you're reducing your dependency on external inputs, increasing your ability to control your own development, and at the same time, you're saving the planet. So, yeah, there's a lot that I'm proud of, but of course, particularly proud that this partnership has taken off the ground, and really looking forward to it going further and inviting, of course, others to invest in it as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Tedeschi, I just told you the story of this youth, and I know you have the Trade and Development Fund, which basically, what opportunities do you think Trade and Development Bank can provide to people who are in this circular economy space, particularly these young ones who have proven themselves that they can do it and are expanding and just need a little bit more push? Are there opportunities for such people in the Trade and Development Bank, particularly through the fund?
Yes, in fact, there certainly are, and we are very much trying to intensify our response. We talk about scaling up and synergizing a lot in our industry these days around some of these imperatives, and I'd like to flag a couple of very interesting initiatives. I can't say it's as focused an arrowhead as the particular facility that we're discussing today, but we do have some new initiatives that will dovetail very nicely with this circular economy facility. And one to highlight is a new clean energy facility we've established with the World Bank Group. It'll be focusing on clean cooking. And within that space, we already have about $300 million that is being availed on a very targeted basis. And that will support a number of projects that will help accelerate use of clean energy, also with aspects to do with the recycling agenda. Green briquettes, as an example, also having fire stoves that are innovative that can actually use biomass in a way that also allows some element of circularity. But also, we are all very seized with this new tectonic shift towards electric vehicles. And we all know that there's going to be a huge opportunity to start recycling batteries that run through their normal cycle. And we have, again, in that respect, a brand new facility that is coming online, hopefully by year end. It's going to be an e-mobility fund. And this e-mobility fund will be looking to scale up and accelerate the rapid adoption of EVs. But within that facility, we'll be looking to support business models that will have a recycling agenda. There's going to be some very interesting leasing companies that will be accelerating the rollout of EVs, and as part of their business model, there will be an element of recycling batteries, right? And so we know that around critical minerals, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to do that. And then the last area to highlight is a green housing value chain fund that we're also rolling out, again, with the World Bank Group. And this will be a specific fund that will look at sustainable materials and efficient utilization of materials in the development of the housing market. And so these are all, very strong facilities that will help support the cause of the circular economy and also address some of the other initiatives. So there's a lot happening. I can't sit down, and I'm going to borrow from the remark to say we can't single out one specific transaction at this stage, but I have flagged our new green building.
No, thank you very much. That has been quite impressive, that you have a structured facility, a strategy to dealing with the issues of recycling. Several years ago, some of us raised an alarm that we bring in so much cheap batteries to drive our energy transition. Batteries that last for 2 years from cheap production. And when you look at the way these batteries are being recycled, kids are going into them, breaking them, extracting the lead and so on. And we're afraid that while we're trying to solve an energy transition problem, we're going to be creating a health issue, lead poisoning, with these little children because we don't have a facility. So I'm so glad that you have a very structured strategy how this will be recycled. So that brings me back to you, UNEP. This is a global challenge. What is UNEP doing in this space, particularly in this recycling, to ensure that the health of these children, for instance, are addressed? Do you have policies? Do you have initiatives that you're embarking on?
Yes, Tony, we do have a number of initiatives. We have about 60 initiatives around the house working across regions. I will not bore you with all 60 of them. I will start maybe by referencing what we call Go for SDGs, which is the Global Opportunities for Sustainable Development Goals, and which is really an accelerator for the SDG 12 on sustainable and responsible consumption and production, and SDG 8 on decent jobs and economic growth. And what Go for SDG does is to promote circularity in high impact sectors. We're looking at food, we're looking at textiles, we're looking at tourism, we're looking at sustainable lifestyles and green jobs for youth. So for example, we are currently working in East Africa to develop harmonized sustainable tourism standards for East Africa, where we really want to look at social and economic benefits for local communities, but also issues around cultural heritage, and really at the bottom of it, how do we reduce the negative environmental impacts of tourism in the sub-region. Another example of work we do is through the One Planet Network, which is a global community of practitioners, which includes policymakers, experts, from governments, from civil society, from business and industry, to really look at how we implement what we call the 10-year framework of program on sustainable consumption and production. Sorry, it's a mouthful. And under this initiative, we're looking at establishing, or we have rather already in place, a toolbox to help build circularity in nationally determined contribution of African countries. I think it was tested here at the last Africa Climate Summit with a group of countries in partnership with your team in the bank. And we are now looking into really rolling it out and support countries in producing the next generation of NDCs. And we are also working globally to develop a circularity protocol for business. This will have regional components, and we are really at the conceptualization stage. And one of the things that we will seek to do is engage every region into a conversation of what really should be the basic principles to include in the protocol, and how these should be rolled out and customized to different regions. If you allow me, one more example.
Okay, just one more example.
We also are looking at circularity in plastics. As you know, UNEP is leading the global conversation around setting up a treaty to end plastic pollution. And as part of those conversations and in parallel, we have UNEP Plastics initiatives that looks at really creating a new plastics economy. How do we really look at reducing plastic pollution, redesigning products, and keeping plastics in the economy as long as we can. And in that particular initiative, which covers about 60 countries, we have 14 projects in 60 countries. There's one that we, as an Africa office, are going to start in Zimbabwe and Nigeria, is really looking at establishing national extended producer responsibility programs to really mitigate plastic pollution.
Okay.
So
thank you very much. Very rich initiatives. Please give a round of applause. Mr. Chanda, we're rounding up. You're in the field with the communities, with the people, actually implementing this circular economy initiative. What do you think the Africa circular economy can provide for you to enable you deliver more of this circular economy initiatives in the field? What do you want from us?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good ask, and we really appreciate it because what we are looking at is having an idea of the situation out there. It doesn't have to be very detailed. We want some quick assessments in each country to understand what is happening to the waste, particularly waste related to water and sanitation, because once we have that information and we engage with government in policy dialogue, then we will be in a better position to sell the need to prepare, to undertake feasibility studies and prepare designs that can then be upscaled, or we can invest downstream. Now, at the moment, we don't have much of the information. We have been undertaking some country water security profiles for each of the countries, but we have not gone to that depth. So if we can have some support, to capture what is happening in terms of the waste, the liquid waste, the solid waste, and where it's going, then we can have a story to tell or something to engage the government, because it's very important to get government buy-in for us to undertake, to support them in undertaking feasibility studies and designs. If you can go a step further, we'd also appreciate, because the scale is huge on the continent. I mean, we're looking at, we don't know what is happening in terms of waste disposal of 800 million people on the continent. We don't know where the waste is, open defecation everywhere. So we want to capture that information so that we can then do the next step, undertake feasibility studies, do the designs, and then the financing from the bankers can come in. Now, in doing these studies and designs, we build in the circular economy approach. That's the whole point, and this is where we're starting from. But the starting point is we need to know what is the situation at the moment so that we can then expand and get the youth and everyone involved and make a business case. Slowly, the private sector is warming up, to participating in the recycling, in the treatment of waste. So that is our ask. Support us in undertaking the studies, the assessments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that cuts across all the other sectors. So, Ambassador Tapiola, you've heard the ask. Finland is very supportive of this initiative. Actually, not just supportive, leading the way in circular economy. What else do you think the government of Finland or your other close partners could be brought together to still do to support the Africa Circular Economy Facility?
Okay, thanks. And thank you for extremely good interventions by everyone. But I'll be a little bit provocative on this one because, yes, we have sort of kicked off things together with the NDF and so on. But then comes this question of ownership, and we're doing quite a lot. I mean, if I look at our own experience, we were the country with the first national circular economy roadmap. We have put very strong domestic commitments, and it's important that our partners in Africa do that as well, and that we really try to get as many African countries into the fund and working together with the fund as possible. I mean, we're sitting here in Kenya, and Kenya has really shown incredible leadership in environmental matters and climate matters. I mean, I remember in this very same compound, we were hosted by President Ruto for the African Climate Summit in early September. I'm not sure if Kenya is already a part of ACEF. I would like to see that happen. There is legislation here, which is very, very important. And it is important that if you look at the way forward, like everywhere, you need legislation and policies, you need awareness and sort of education, and you need the right infrastructure. And for instance, one thing which we as development partners here are looking at is that we hope to see the extended producer responsibility law gazetted as soon as possible. That's been one of the things which I think we've been waiting for, and that also goes into this. So, I mean, it's, as I said earlier when we talked about UNEA, and I think we all have a shared understanding that circular economy is the way to go, and we really need to go in that direction. But that means that we have to have this conversation where it is not driven by donors, it is not driven, and I think President Ruto has shown great leadership in sort of rehashing the financing discussion as well. But that it's really one where all of us have our roles to play. We've provided, together with the NDF, and we've provided and kick-started platforms, we've kick-started funds, facilities, trying to get things going. We have, for instance, with South Africa, a good sort of structured dialogue on circular economy. We are globally pushing forward through our innovation fund, CITRA, the World Circular Economy Forum, which was in Rwanda, Helsinki, Next one will be in Sao Paulo in Brazil. So we're very active in sort of getting this conversation going. But in order for us really to succeed is that everybody uses those tools and that we get more and more countries in this continent as well as part of this fund. So I'll throw the ball a little bit back to you.
Back to me.
It's a joint effort. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Please put, indeed, it's a joint effort, and the seed capital, this that was put, what did Davina call it, the mustard seed? It's already growing the big Iroko trees. If you know what I mean by an Iroko tree, if you get into the forest, you find that one tree that just stands and dominates everything. That's the Iroko tree. And I can assure you that the seed capital that you put in is already building momentum and generating results for this. So please, let's put our hands together for our panelists. You have been very good, answered the difficult questions, and even the ones that had to be thrown back. So please, thank you very much. This is a time to ask that one or those two burning questions that you really want to ask. It doesn't matter that the panelists have moved, we can answer your questions. Any question? We're going to take 2 questions.
Thank you very much for a very insightful panel. My name is Diana Gishaga. I am the founder and managing partner of Private Equity Support. We've worked with SMEs from across 26 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. 2 things about the circularity economy that I just wanted to bring out is, and I think the panelists all alluded to it, availing the funding to enable that transition in terms of putting the necessary infrastructure to enable businesses be able to undertake circular activities. I'll give you a very quick example because I don't want to take too much time. A lot of the small and medium businesses are trying to do a lot in circular economy. We've worked with businesses that are trying to make use of the avocado waste they use for skin or hair care things. We've worked with businesses that are trying to use food process elements, the waste, to make value-added products. The problem is when they go to a financial institution, it's not just about bringing machinery. There's a lot that goes into it. There's costs needed for technical assistance, for them to develop processes, to institute new ways of working. And that element is not funded by the banks because the bank wants to know, I just want to fund the machinery, it's asset finance. So they don't get enough funding to be able to undertake the process fully. So my question would be, do we have opportunities to be able to provide blended financing, not only to banks, but other alternative financial solutions like microfinance institutions, credit-only institutions? Because when you think about reach, a lot of these SMEs don't just work with the banks, they will work with these other financial institutions. So that is my question. Are we thinking about providing a blended finance facility through non-traditional funders? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the second question, but I'll prime Mr. David Bamlango, who is the Group Vice President and Deputy MD of the TDB, to respond to that quickly. But second question.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for the session. My name is Boyega Olorunfemi from Nigeria. I'm also a member of the Africa Circular Economy Network, Nigeria chapter. I know that at some point, the Africa Circular Economy Foundation developed an action plan for Africa. And then I realized at later times that the country also have started developing circular economy roadmaps. I want to ask, is there a possibility that we have just one paper that would say Africa Circular Economy roadmap or framework, and then every other nations in Africa can plug in based on their diversity? And I think this would help in order not to start a multiplicity of funds and then access to them becoming a little easy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll quickly answer that and ask the VP to answer. Yes, there is the African Union Circular Economy Strategy. that's the one that everybody follows on the continent. But because there are specificities per country, you can then be able to align them, tease out what is relevant to every specific country, but they must follow the same thing. And that's what's going on. We are not developing a circular economy for Africa, strategy or a roadmap for Africa. No. That's done by the African Union Commission, already done. So every other thing we do has to build on that. And so for the question on infrastructure, Mike? Yes, sir.
Working. Well, thank you very much. Very good question. The good news, I think, is that we are aware of the difficulty that SMEs and MSMEs and all corporate really do face. Because what we consider as large corporate on our continent from a global rich world perspective are still SMEs, really. So the need for capacitating funding, grant funding, is critical to allow them to absorb the debt financing that we bring to bear. So all the facilities that Mr. Dese mentioned, the e-mobility facility, the green housing supply chain facility, or the one dealing with clean cooking and other related areas, all of them will have a grant component, which we are doing all three of them with our partners, the World Bank at IDA, and all of them will include elements of grant, such that when we provide the debt, we will assess the need of the SME, of the borrower, for deployment of a component of grant. So blended will be indeed the theme for all those facilities. And beyond that, within TDB Group, we are developing even more solutions on the grant side, some of which can be deployed independently of any debt financing. Within TDF, our concessional arm, and at the group level overall, we are setting up several grant-making facilities that will come in sometime before the debt even arrives, to allow you, your SME, to be ready for debt financing. We appreciate the challenge. We appreciate that we have to go downstream to allow the institutions, the entities, the private sector to rise up to the level where FIs, financial institutions, can come in with the debt financing. So yes, we are aware of the challenge, and we are gearing up to doing so. So do not hesitate to reach out just because you are not 100% at the bankable level yet. Do reach out. We will work with you early on to bring you to bankability through different tools. I'm sure our friend at the AFDB have similar solutions, and I know that our partners at the other DFIs have similar solutions as well. So do not hesitate, do not fear to come to us. Do come to us. We have a toolkit from which we touch to make the right interventions for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Nordic Development Fund wants to chip in.
Thank you. Just a very quick addition to what was spoken here. I just wanted to mention a facility that we're hosting, the Environment and Energy Partnership for Eastern and Southern Africa, that really works with early stage companies really to overcome some of those challenges that you were describing in order to sort of a bit earlier than what the stage that the banks can do, and then really to help them along the road. And there's a focus on energy, but a lot of the companies that have come in also do have circular economy solutions that they're working on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Please, let's put our hands together for our panelists. Thank you for the audience. It's been a very interesting event. And please, in our secular lives, be secular. Thank you.